You're about to listen to an archived episode of The Night Shift with Zeno Horoman. This is brought to you commercial-free by the Surfcast Podcast. If you're interested in more historical, educational, and entertaining surf fishing content, check out weekly episodes of the Surfcast Podcast available today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, including www.surfcastpodcast.com.
It is my pleasure to introduce Larry Wentworth from Big Fish Bait Company. We go way back to the SOL and SP.com days. We fished together in Cuttyhunk for years and years, it seems to say weekend. So, Larry, welcome to Night Fish Podcast.
Thanks, Zeno. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I understand that you took your kids fishing, right? And then instead of them catching a fishing bug, it was you who caught it.
It was me. Exactly.
How did that happen?
I had fished my whole life, but mostly freshwater. And I was separated and divorced and looking for something to do with the kids. We're at the beach one day, and they run up out of the water, and they said, there's a bunch of fish swimming around us. So I went down to see what it was, and I don't think I'd ever seen a striper before, but we went down in the water, and there was all these schoolies around them, and they said, can we try fishing for stripers? So, like the next weekend, I got my dad's old fishing gear out of the basement. I didn't have any surf gear at the time. This was probably like 1999. That sounds funny to say, but...
yeah, it's a while ago.
And his equipment was like from the 50s, old Penn squitters and Dacron line, just crap. And I went to the bait shop on the way to get some bait or whatever. I bumped into a friend of mine, my buddy Warren, and he happened to be on his way down to Audet to do some striper fishing. So he said, why don't you just come on, meet me down there, and I got some extra rods, and we went down there, and the kids each hooked up with a striper that day, and it was a lot of fun. And of course, from that time on, I'm the one that got hooked. I mean, I just went full bore from there into surf casting.
So give me the progression from, getting hooked on fishing to making plugs. Obviously, we don't have to jump on it all at once because it's a lifetime of things, and it's still today. I assume that most of you guys who make plugs are still learning and still doing your thing.
Learning.
But what was the thing? Obviously, you like fishing, but what was the influence? What was the reason? How would you even figure out that you can make a plug?
Well, I started to get into it because I didn't have a lot of money. So I bought a cheap spin cast surf fishing outfit, and I just started doing some surf casting, and I was horrible at it to begin with. Just horrible.
We were all horrible at it.
I mean, bad. I just was. It took me like a year to catch my first striper. Seriously, it was bad.
Same, dude. Same.
The learning curve was pretty wide, and over time, like I said, I caught that first striper, and I got to be a little better at it. I think I started out with like chunk bait, that kind of stuff. Never been a big chunk bait fisherman. It's kind of boring. It kind of is what led me to begin getting into artificials and throwing plugs and that kind of thing. I mean, I got better. I was terrible at that, fishing plugs. I started out with Gibbs pencil poppers, and I was amazed at the time. This was about 2000 at the price of these Gibbs plugs. I mean, $17 for a plug to me seemed kind of insane. But I picked up some Gibbs plugs, and I just wasn't good at it. Mass Bass had their annual fishing show. I think it was 2001. And there was a surfcaster from Plum Island up by Gloucester who was going to give a seminar. His name's Steve Papos. So I figured I'd get some good information, go sit in on the seminar. And Steve was great. We're friendly now. We're friends today. And, he gave me a lot of good pointers. And one of the most important things he said that day was retrieve speed. You just can't take a plug out of the water, throw it out there. You might get lucky, but you have to, as you know, as everybody knows, kind of find how the fish want it, whether it's slow or a medium retrieve, really splashy. Sometimes you got to work it a little bit to find out how the fish like it. But that was the one thing that Steve Pappo said was retrieve speed. And I began to get better with the plugs. And from there, I joined Mass Bass, of course, and got involved with that club. And you meet a lot of people. You get a lot of information. You start to make friends. Then I started venturing out down Cape Cod. We began renting a house down in Wellfleet with the kids, and that kind of fueled the fire quite a bit. Next thing you know, I have a 85 Jeep CJ, rod racks on the front, the whole thing. Down there fishing all the time, fish all night, come home early in the morning, go to work all day. It just became an addiction. You know, and then one of the sites I go on, Striped Dash Bass, I got hooked on that, and there was a great plug building forum on Striped Dash Bass. So I started to hang out in there quite a bit, get friendly with a lot of the builders, and seeing these beautiful plugs that they were making, just unbelievable work. And I've always been kind of a tinkerer. I like to work with wood, work with my hands.
That's right. You got a background in woodworking too, right? Yeah.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
I mean, just a handyman.
Right.
I never had any formal training or anything.
Hey, you save yourself a lot of money being a handyman these days. I'll tell you that much.
Well, you should come see my house. I've saved us quite a bit of money.
I'm looking at it right now. I know guys can't see it, but it looks very pretty from here.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on here, believe me.
Listen, and before you get to the plugs, I mean, I want to I don't want to lose this moment, because I don't think a lot of people are going to remember, but a lot of people will. The SB.com in those days, I mean, not only did they make great plugs, but the guys had the coolest names. You remember that?
Yeah. And it was always, when we first started meeting each other and hanging out, I always hated calling, somebody Slipknot or Bassmaster, or, my name was Big Fish on there. That's kind of where
right.
the Big Fish Bait Company came from. Not that I catch any big fish, but that was my name anyway. But it was easier to get to know their real names. So, and I'm still friendly with all those guys. It's 20 years later, and, all those talented guys. And John Habs was on there, and Steve Silver, Cape Sam's.
Yeah, I thought at the time that was really, really a special place to go for a lot of people. Even regular fishermen, even if you weren't into the plugs. The guys were super nice, and I never made a plug in my life, but I would read, and I got to be friends with all of those guys. They were all excellent fishermen to begin with. Right. Mac being one of them, the professor.
McCloud,
Jesus, there were some brilliant people in there. And John Habs. I mean, John was like bigger than life figure in those days.
Great guy.
Yes, he was. Now, did any of them in particular influence you more than others?
It's hard to say. They all influenced me. Just seeing all their work, and they were also helpful with a guy that had never made a plug before, and I drove them bonkers with questions. I must have driven them just straight up the wall. But they were so helpful, all of them. And I began to get good at making plugs, and I was really enjoying it. And they had get-togethers a couple times a year, so all the plug builders would get together, whether it was down South County in Rhode Island.
It was a plug fest or something like that, right? What was the name of it?
Yeah, we had it every winter. We had a plug fest, and all the builders would get together.
And M&D or whatever the shop was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah. Mike Thomas's shop, yeah.
Do you remember the first fish you caught on your own plug?
Yeah, I do. It wasn't one of my designs. I think the first plug I put in the water that I made was a knockoff of John Hab's 2-ounce needlefish. And
I love that needlefish, by the way.
It was unbelievable. And my knockoff was pretty good. It was, It was as good as John's, and I went out with my buddy Slinger. That was his name, Matt Stidstone.
Yeah,
we
he was
down
Big Eel guy, if I remember, right?
Yep, Slinger. He's a good guy.
I'm going to tell you the story where he cleaned my clock one day in Cuttyhunk, but go ahead.
So we headed out one night to Ballston Beach, and we happened to bump into Bruce May, who was Slipknot, and Bassmaster Dave Manzi, two other guys who are great plug builders. And we hammered fish all night, the four of us. Fish up to 20, 25 pounds, like every cast. And I still have that plug. It is absolutely beat to shit. It has all the scars, and I even pulled the belly split ring pulled out from catching so many fish on it that night. And unfortunately, I had a couple of extra ones with me, but yeah, we had a great time that night, and I was just hooked from then. Just, I don't like to keep using the pun hooked, but it's just the way it is. Another plug that I knocked off early on was one of John Huff's Burnsy Bait Company. He made a great surf howdy.
Howdy,
you know,
yeah.
surf
Yeah, I have them. I still have brand new ones still in the basement. I Now that he's not around, I just feel bad of taking him out of package, honestly.
Yeah, John was a great guy, and that plug was just a fish slayer. And that was another one early on that I fished.
You know what you said before? I was kind of thinking about what you said. I didn't want to interrupt you. You mentioned that when he told you about the retrieve, how important that was, and obviously you were just starting out. I think sometimes we lose the track of time when we get older and we're in this, and we're like, wow, I mean, everybody knows that, but think about it. There was a time when we didn't know that, when that was fascinating. You're talking about sucking up plugs. I remember going to Jones Beach and losing every single plug in my bag to a bale closing on me. And listen,
we've all done
this
that.
Is a half an hour walk from the car. So, if anybody goes like, oh, this guy wrote the book, no, there was a time when I knew nothing. So for all of you that are just starting out today, look, there's a long road. It's a beautiful road, but all of us started somewhere. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's pretty cool that you remember the plugs that you caught a fish on. I mean,
how can I forget? And both John Habs and John Huff, they were two of the guys on that site, and they were so helpful in my own progress, learning how to build plugs, and their beautiful work pushed me to try and do the best job that I could.
Do you find that today's it's different amongst you guys, or is it the old guard is still the same and the new guard is? And I'm not trying to paint anyone in any different ways, but I know it has changed quite a bit. I'm just curious if it's the same amount of help being extended today as it was then.
I don't think there's as much help. Those forums are pretty, as we were saying earlier, they're pretty quiet now because everybody's on Facebook and. I don't know, back then everybody just seemed to help each other out. But today I'm still friends with a lot of those guys, and I'm friends with a lot of other guys who have companies building plugs. So there's a good community there. If somebody needs something, we can reach out. I can reach out to Ryan Smith or Don Gamelli from After Hours, and if I need something, if they need something, we help each other out. Back in the 2000s, there could be a lot of ego between builders, and I don't know. I tried to never really get involved in that. I like to get along with everybody.
Well, to be fair, you were just new, so you really didn't have any standings to get into those conversations.
No.
And the other thing was that was a fairly new way of communicating for everyone. So it was a free for all for a while until people kind of figure out who wants to be there and who doesn't. But it was very helpful in a lot of ways, because all of a sudden, all those conversations that you guys share in private about plug building, you could ask, and if this guy wasn't going to answer, somebody else was going to answer. So there was a lot of sharing. I do remember that.
Yeah.
So today you're making a lot of plugs, and most of them are obviously, listen, I'm not going to suggest that anybody makes anything original, okay? Everybody's got their own spin on a classic of some kind.
Right.
What is it that I know you make extraordinary amount of plugs, and I know you don't sell all of them. You're making for yourself, like every plug builder. What is it that you like to make the most?
That's tough. I like to make all of them. I enjoy the process from turning to machining the bodies, and there are times it gets monotonous if you're turning 100 of a particular plug and it's just one after the other, and it just kind of gets crazy. But which one do I enjoy making the most? For some reason, I have to say pencil poppers. They're a lot simpler to build. There's just a lot fewer steps involved. I can make them a lot faster than, say, like metal lip swimmers. There's lip cuts and belly weighting and all kinds of filling in holes and sanding, and there's a lot more processes involved with a metal lip swimmer.
Your Surfstar is probably my favorite. Yeah, right. The Prey swimmer is one of my favorite metal lip swimmers of all time, and not because everybody should go run and buy one, because, well, they should buy it. I mean, it's a great plug, but the thing, right, two of yellows and then one of every other color. But the thing is, it's such a limited application plug because of its lip. You know, it's a Surfstar lip, so it's not a Z lip. And I mean, I'm going to be straight on and said that it's not as nearly as useful in most situations it is as the Z lip, because the Z lip you can do a lot with it. You can't do with your plug. You can't do the rough water. You can't do. It doesn't cast as well. But
can I make a correction on the rough water?
Not yet. Let me finish. But I mean,
I have a bone to pick.
Okay,
with you.
that's fine. Fair enough. That's why you're here, right? But I gotta say, like, when the conditions are right and you can, like, I'm going to say it like this: when I can use a red fin, I can use that plug in most situations. But the action on that plug is stupendous for, you know, when the conditions are. Now you go ahead. You can rebuke my rough water thing.
Well, Surfstars are great plugs.
Right.
I mean, traditionally they're a top water plug, calmer water, as you know.
Creek Chub was the original Surfstars, right?
Creek Chub was the original Surfstar, yep. Fabulous plug, and that was the first metal lip plug that I made, and it swims pretty true to an original Surfstar. Now the difference with my Surfstar is it's belly weighted, and most Surfstars are not belly weighted. Now you talk about Surfstars not being able to operate in rougher water. I've fished my prey in the Cape Cod Canal with a ripping tide, and it'll hold. I've caught huge fish down the Cape Cod Canal.
I'm not suggesting, though, not to pick a bone with you. When I say rough condition, I don't mean the current. I mean the wave action. I mean like action, storm action. You know what I'm saying? Like you.
Yeah. When it's stormy, you need something heavy.
Yes, and a Z-lip can go on.
A Z-lip.
Right. This one's going to get tossed around. That's what I mean. No, not in the current. The current's a whole. Actually, your plug in the current just becomes more crazy than it normally is, because the action gets a little bit faster because the lip gets caught in that current.
Yeah, Surfs is a fun plug to.
Speaking of canals, since you brought that up, you used to be a big canal guy.
Yeah, well, I was fishing down the Cape for years, like I was saying earlier, in the early 2000s. The fishing down there was just fabulous. I mean, anybody was down there fishing, and we would bump into all kinds of guys down there. As the years went on, like 04, 05, the area got inundated with seals down there, and by the time 07 rolled around, you couldn't catch a fish. The seals just run along the shoreline, and just seemed like all the bass would not come in close. So the fishing down there, unfortunately, that was a time when if you drove up and down Route 6 to P-Town through Wellfleet and Truro, every car, every truck had a bumper-mounted rod rack. It was all about fishing. There were campers rigged for fishing. Those times down there are gone, and most of that's due to the fact that the fishing just dried up. You can't even find a bait shop south of Eastham anymore, all the way down to Provincetown. That's kind of sad.
Yeah. What was the shop that used to be down there? Used to sell books, the Nelsons?
A Nelson's, yeah. Long time shop down there. And when the fishing kind of dried up down there, I lived north of the canal, so it was a natural progression for me to begin fishing the canal. And again, I was terrible at it. That was another learning curve, but you just put your time in, like you always do.
I'll admit I'm a little intimidated by the canal. I don't fish it, and I see the guys. I mean, I'm not stupid. I can kind of figure out stuff that I need to do, but as always, when you put in a new situation, you need to learn. I'm sure you have gravitated to kayak fishing. I remember a while ago, and you spend a lot of time on it, right? And
I do, yeah.
Right, so you have special plugs that you like off the kayak?
Same plugs I use in the surf.
Same thing?
They transition, most of them transition perfectly. Of course, I'm not going to fish some of my bigger pencils and things like that from the kayak. I use more of a lighter setup, so. But I troll some of the big metal lips I make from the kayak, so they transition perfectly from surf to kayak.
So do you what, you troll with one and then you pencil pop another and then you got a bait on a third rod?
No, one at a time.
Just joking.
One at a time. I got enough going on with one fishing rod. I'm bad enough with one fishing rod.
Yeah, listen.
Don't get me going.
Remember when we used to go to Cuttyhunk, man? That was we had a great time.
Cuttyhunk was another transition because of the fishing down the Cape. I buddied up with Don Gamelli,
yes,
who was on from After Hours, who was on Striped Dash Bass, and we became close. And we began venturing over to Cuttyhunk, and there's another learning curve when you start up over there. And then I bump into jamokes like yourself over there.
Yeah, for whatever reason, we used to spend the same week there in June on the same moon for years, and there would be fly fishing guys. Remember? No.
Yeah. I had all my fly fishing rods with me.
The fly fishing guys would take the whole club, and we would have the whole place to ourselves because you couldn't get another room. It was awesome. By the way, now you reminded me about the slinger. So we were Cuttyhunk at the Southwest Point. I'm on a rock in a wetsuit, and he's behind me with a bucket of eels. A bucket with not a waders. He had waders or hip waders. I don't know what he had. But the thing is, I remember distinctively the plug landing at my feet behind me because I was on a rock so far.
Yeah.
And every
I know the rock you were on.
Right, exactly. And every 20 seconds, I'd be like, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. By the end of the night, I think he had 6 or 8 30s, and I had a bunch of schoolies on the plug. But another lesson learned of, when the eels are when they're in the game and they want them, you can throw all the plugs you want.
Yeah, I love fishing eels. I don't do it much anymore because I'm kind of, I'm hooked on fishing the plugs that I build. That's kind of what drives me to fish. I enjoy that.
What drives you to make all these different plugs? I mean, I know you're not a big selling type of guys. You don't do the shows. You don't sell to the stores.
I had them in stores for a number of years, and I did the shows for a number of years.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I did the Rissa show, and I did the Plum Island show and the Mass Bass show, and after a while, they just sell themselves. I don't really. I mean, I enjoy doing the shows, but it's a lot of work to set up for those shows, as you know.
Agree.
A lot of work, and it's to be at Rissa for 3 days on those hard floors. I mean, I was hobbled for a week with the shin splints. You know what I'm saying? So
much of the bad coffee for 3 days. It's it was brutal. But I mean, it was. Listen, to me, it's you get to see all of you guys that I don't get to see of all the Jersey shows, the Long Island shows.
I love the shows.
So I love the shows, but I actually love attending them more than doing them. I will tell you that. Go there, have a good time. From that standpoint, do you feel like you able to express yourself in certain ways by making plugs? Is this part of artistic expression for you in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a creative guy. I like to make so many different styles of plugs. I do kind of get bored, so I like to, work on different things, and the creative aspect of it, I enjoy very much, from the woodworking through the paint work. And there were times when, I wanted to make the really fancy paint jobs, and when you're pumping out 400, 500, 600 plugs a year. You don't have a lot of time to, I might make a couple hundred more than that some years. Depends on what I'm building. But I learned after a while, people just want fishy-looking plugs. I want my plugs in the water. I don't want them on a guy's shelf, in his collection. I much more prefer people to be fishing the plugs that I make, and I think that they do. Because I get a lot of good response from customers who use them, and that really makes me happy because it sure isn't making my wallet too much fatter. But the creative aspect of building plugs is what I enjoy, and hearing back from the people that use them, that's really the best part of building and meeting so many people, so many great people.
Yeah,
I enjoy that.
I think that's a big part of it. And I was actually just about to ask you about some of the artistic, but we don't have to go into that since you already just answered my question on your own. Yeah, well, it is what it is. I mean, everyone has different feelings on it, and I understand that. What would you tell a complete newbie that buys your plug?
Who's never fished plugs before?
Yeah, the guy that's just getting into sport.
I'd start them out with pencils. Pencil poppers is it's a relatively easy form of plug fishing. Anybody can do it. Metal lip swimmers, they take a little more patience and a little more knowledge of the areas you're fishing, but pencil poppers work any place. And again, I keep hearing Steve Papos in my ear. It's all about retrieve speed. So I would tell a customer, take this pencil popper and just throw it out on the surface, and the best advice I can give them is to vary their retrieve speed. I was never one to really rip my plugs across the water like I see some guys. They get that fishing rod between their legs and they're shaking it crazy. I call it, I hope the Jersey guys don't get mad at me. I call it Jersey fishing.
Poor Jersey guys get beat up for a lot of things.
Well, I see guys down the canal, they fish the plugs too fast too, and you gotta find the way the fish like it. But I would tell somebody, buy a pencil popper and start there.
Why should they buy your plug instead of somebody else's?
Because the money goes in my pocket.
I love it. Good answer.
But seriously, there are so many great plugs out there. I'll never... I send people to other guys. Try this guy's plugs. There's a lot of talented builders out there. Most of them are good friends of mine, and we get along great. So why not, send someone in their direction? Particularly if they're making something that I don't make. You know what I mean? Or if it's a different size, or
what plug do you like to fish with most? I mean, I know it depends on the condition. It's a stupid question, okay? But we all kind of gravitate to our own favorites,
Yeah, I like, that's a tough call. I get asked that question a lot. It comes down to whether I want to fish top water. There's nothing like a smash on a pencil popper. Sunrise, sunset, anytime. But I think there's just something a little bit more special about fishing a metal lip under cover of darkness. You can't see anything. You throw that plug out there and you're working it in slow, and all of a sudden that rod tip just bends right down to the water. And you got a good one on, and you can see the splash. Maybe there's just a little bit of moon illuminating the splash in the water, and it makes it really exciting. So I think I fish pencils mostly, but just out of necessity. But those times when I'm fishing metal lip swimmers are pretty special.
If you were not going to fish your plug, whose plugs are you going to fish first? Okay, listen.
Wow, you're really going to back me up.
I'm really going to back you in a
corner.
Well, no, this is not try to pick somebody else's plug or recommend another builder. What I'm saying is there something that you won't make that something is just so good that it's not worth your time?
Darters. I don't make a darter. They're a tough plug to make. I've never really fished darters. I know a lot of guys love darters. I know you love darters. I've heard you talk about fishing darters.
Once in a while, yeah.
But I just figured there's enough guys out there making darters. Tattoo was making darters, and then now Don Gamelli from After Hours makes a beautiful darter. that was just one I never wanted to tackle. But if I was going to fish someone else's plug that I don't make, it would probably be a darter, and it would probably be Don Gamelli's darter from After Hours. Yeah, I was just talking to Don the other day. He's doing well.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. What is your favorite color to fish with? I know I'm not going to ask you what is your favorite color to paint, because I think what other people want and what you want are probably two different things. But What is it that you like to fish with? If you were going to pick a paint color for your bag, what would it be in?
My bunker.
Okay.
I think most people are familiar with my bunker pattern. It's basically just a silver with some variations of color on the side and some traditional bunker spots, but day or night, that color always produces for me. A lot of guys, they talk about the dark plugs on dark nights and light plugs on light nights, and you know, the dark plug thing really never panned out for me as much as I tried that theory. I mean, there were a few times it worked on particular nights, but I've thrown a bunker colored prey or a bunker colored Z-lip or a Beastmaster, as I call them, the ones that I make. And that bunker color produces, it doesn't matter if it's new moon, a half moon, that's just a productive color for me. Color, you pick a color because it gives you comfort. You feel confident.
That was going to be my next question.
Like, that's because I read minds.
No, okay. I was gonna. That was going to be my next question, because I'm often wonder. Like, I know you like yellow, you like bunker. Like, how much does this has to do with a person's confidence in that plug, and how much it actually has to do with the color itself? Which, by the way, this is the question that we will never have the answer to.
It's true. It's a very specific question, and everybody's answer is going to be different. I just feel by having an array of colors, a customer can come up and something's going to catch his eye that he likes. He likes something about that plug. And if he takes that particular color out and he catches on it, he builds confidence, not just in the plug itself, but in the color. And that's all you can do is have confidence in a plug.
I feel that you're 100% right there, because I feel like once I got confidence in certain plug, the color was important only for me, but I refused to believe. Yes, there was specific nights that, you know, certain color was just going to kill it. I get that.
Right.
But if I, you know, like yellow needlefish, and I had a green that night because I lost yellow and I wasn't catching any fish, it wasn't usually the color, you know. So my point is, I have a huge amount of confidence in the actual plug and not the color, but the color just adds that little bit of, you know, this is my mojo plug, you know. But
right.
I don't know. I'm not a big. I know I say yellow, but to me the plug itself is more important than the color. You know, the action.
You mean as far as action?
Action at the time and the place where you're throwing it, it's more important than the color itself. Like, there's so much more stuff that comes into play.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I think the action of a plug, if I've had the question posed to me, maybe you're about to pose this question, is it the color or is it the action of the plug? I believe more in the action of a particular plug than the color. By my personal experience. Action is almost everything. And with that action is how you work that plug, how fast you work the plug, you know, the whole array of the circumstance where you're fishing, be it current or a calm night in a boulder field. You know, you have to make that plug work. So that's part of your job as a fisherman, is to impart the action to that plug. There is built-in action, but you have to know how to work that plug to get it to do what you want to do.
How many plugs do you actually make, the styles that you actually sell?
I had to write that down because I knew you were going to ask that question. I make, it's either 20 or 22 different, not different styles. I might make 14 different styles, but like, for instance, with a pencil popper, I make, I think it's 6 different sizes and weights. So if I have the Beastmaster plug, I have a large size. Then I have a small size that's called the Mayhem Minnow. So there's variations on size for different styles.
The Mayhem Minnow, is that the jointed one?
That's the little jointed 1 ounce.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a sweet looking plug.
It's a powerful little plug. Let me tell you. Gets the job done. Saltwater or fresh water, it's a fun plug.
Is it, as I heard, making those kind of plugs is as much as work as making 2 plugs?
A jointed
Yes.
plug definitely is more work than making 2 plugs. It's there are a lot of steps to that little Mayhem Minnow is a lot of work. A lot of hand work, a lot of machine work. People would be amazed what goes into, as opposed to making a pencil popper, which is really just a weighted stick, with eyes. But when you make a metal lip swimmer and you add a joint to it, it really doubles your amount of work.
So I assume with that many plugs, you have a good excuse to tell your wife that you're going testing the product.
You've heard it. It's what do I call it? Research and development.
Yes.
She's heard it before. She's in the other room. She's probably chuckling at me right now. But she's out there fishing with me. Angie fishes with me all the time. So I don't need any excuse to go fishing.
I met your wife before, didn't I?
One of the shows, I think.
That's right.
Yes.
I do remember that. What about making the plugs give you most joy? I mean, is it the feedback that you get from people? I know it's not money. None of your guys are all doing the same job that I met you 20 years ago. If anything, some guys got kind of disappointed in the whole plug thing. It's got to be the labor of love. What is it that gives you the most joy?
I love to work with my hands and I love to fish. So it kind of embodies the 2 things I enjoy doing is woodworking and fishing. I call myself a starving artist. I think just about any plug builder, whether he does it part-time or if it's a full-time job, he's not getting rich. It's a lot of work. And you have to be doing it as a labor of love. That's a fact. You have to enjoy what you're doing. A lot of people begin building plugs and they go full bore into the selling plugs, and 2 or 3 years they're gone. I think they just burn out, or they realize that there's really not a lot of money in it. So there's a few guys out there that have been building plugs for 15, 20 years, even longer. But those guys are few and far between. I think it's Gary Soldati and Don Gamelli from After Hours, Ryan Smith, myself. We've all been doing it, I think, for 15 or 20 years. And then there's other guys who are newer than us that make fabulous plugs, and they've been around for a while. Guppy Lures makes great pencil poppers. But it definitely comes down to a labor of love because it's a lot of work, and the guys, they really put themselves into it. I know I do. You should come by the shop sometime.
I think people appreciate that, and I think that's why most of the referrals come from the word of the mouth and not you guys advertising. It's other users who do well are usually the best salesmen for your product because they talk and tell other people and tell other friends about it. So what is the best way to contact you? You never had an online store. You probably found that to be a pain in the ass. Had to update all the inventory. And
I had one for a while. It was a real pain.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Listen, I know all about that. So how do the people contact you? What's the best way?
Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Big Fish Bait Company.
And you have these sales, right? The pop-up sales that you put the stuff on,
Pop-up sales or flash sales, we call them. I run a bunch of plugs, and when they're ready to sell, if you're on my page, I send out a notification, usually a day or so in advance, and I let them know what kind of plugs, what time the sale is, and say it's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. People are usually sitting right by their keyboard with their finger on the trigger, and the plugs go pretty quick.
It must be nice to be so popular.
It's not that nice. It's not. It's a lot of work. It really is.
You mean the people don't shake your hands in Walmart and stop you and said, "Oh, I know, I used your plug."
Yeah, I get a lot of that. That's fun. That's a lot of fun.
It is.
I love that.
I think to some extent that is the most satisfying part for me personally. I've had people on the street or at the movie theater. It's a little comfortable with the wife, but they're like, just the fact that you help someone. I don't really care about all this other shit, okay?
Right.
The fact that someone got something out of that you created with your hands, or me that wrote,
right,
or, the magazine that we're doing, or even this podcast, the fact that you help someone, to me, it's worth more than any other financial benefit, because think about it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you and I know each other for 20 years. We're still in the same spot.
Yeah.
We're doing the same things that because we love it. We don't do it for any
We
other
enjoy
reason.
it. That's right.
That's all that is.
We have a passion, and we try and share that passion with whoever comes along.
I think helping this new generation understand what exactly have we seen and gone through and seen this rise of a striped bass, the collapse, the rise and back down. It's kind of important for us to share what we know so they can be more aware,
right,
because we sure are not leaving this place as good as we found it.
I've been saying that a lot lately.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. Anything else that we didn't cover?
We could talk about how much fun Cuttyhunk was.
How much fun Cuttyhunk was.
That was a lot of fun. We used to, when you start going to Cuttyhunk, when I started going to Cuttyhunk with Dawn, it became, over a couple of seasons, it became a who's who of surf fishing.
Yeah, that was kind of, those days were cool, man. Everybody
I met you over there, and Tommy, and your buddy Ray Crimmins. Steve McKenna was there. I think Paul Melnick was there one time.
Yeah, Bill Wetzel would call. A lot of guys.
Gary Soldati is always out there.
Yeah, it was like, who's who. You're right.
Yeah, right. I got to get back out there. I haven't been out there in 10 years. So.
We were there last year. We did some small fish, or the year before, because this COVID shit's got me all wrapped up.
My invitation must have got lost.
Yeah, well, I think you moved subsequently or something. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. We really had a lot of fun. I mean, that was, I missed that place. It's probably the most enjoyable place in the world for me to fish. No, I won't say in the world, but in Northeast it is. I do like the tropical fishing.
Yeah.
But as a place to just, not only it's such a great place because I feel like every cast could be a world record bass.
Yeah.
But the off hours,
always that potential.
That off hours, the camaraderie and just pure bullshit, just chilling out and sharing shit. It was so good. And the people, the crew, whoever was going there, it wasn't like somebody who was maybe into fishing. It was all of us who were just obsessed with fishing.
Yeah, there were no newbies out there. You have to be pretty experienced to work some of those rocks out there.
And Robbie, remember Robbie? We used to walk. From Southwest Point all the way to down underneath and back, and in waders. No wetsuits in those days. I didn't wear them. So
no, the last couple seasons I was out there, I had a wetsuit, but wearing waders was doing the 1.5 miles or 2 miles across the island on an 85-degree night.
Walking on a bowling balls, man, that was...
Yeah.
And then you come back and then you found the fish right underneath the club where you left 3 hours ago and said, what did I go all the way around?
Well, the big thing there, you talk about the downtime when we weren't fishing. We're all sitting there mesmerized by the water. You're on an island like that. You don't want to be sitting there, chewing the fat, bullshitting with your buddies. We all wanted to be fishing 24 hours. But you learned early on you had to pick your spots and you had to get some rest.
Because every bird that in front of you dives in the water, you're like, what was that? What was that? And then next thing you know, you're down in Church's, pencil popping for 4 hours. And then you're taking an early nap because you're exhausted. So you're right. You have to pick and choose your spots.
Yeah, a lot of fun over there. We'll have to get back over there again.
I sure hope so soon.